Good evening from wherever you're watching us from. This is The Social Newsroom. My name is Kate Chira. Monday, 9th December 2024. Our discussion we're going to be having here at The Social Newsroom is going to be very emotive, but even more so, something that we need to all chip in. Thank you to everyone who is in our audience today and wherever you're watching us from at home. Our amazing panel, thank you for joining us tonight. Our conversation today surrounds, of course, femicide. Just a day ahead of the march happening here in Nairobi. Of course, it is against femicide. We're going to be having a conversation with our able panel and, of course, our guest today. I think I'll begin with, of course, my immediate right. This is Venerable Brian Odhiambo, who is from the ACK Church. Kindly introduce yourself.
Thank you for this invitation. As you have mentioned, my name is Venerable Brian Odhiambo. I am an Anglican priest in the Diocese of Machakos, ACK St. Paul's at the River. Thank you.
Thank you. Next to Venerable Brian, we have Patricia Dongo. Please introduce yourself and where you're from.
All right, Patricia Ndago. I'm from an organization called Odipodev, which has been actively working to collect data on femicides in Kenya.
And of course, just across of me, Njeri Mwigwe of Osikimia. Kindly introduce yourself today, farther than I already have.
My name is Njeri Mwigwe. I work at Osikimia. We are a gender-based violence organization working to end the prevalence of the same. Thank you.
And a lady I just had a conversation with just before we got here, Evelyn Tina from Feminist. Kindly introduce yourself as well.
Hi everyone, I'm Oma Elvin Tina from Feminists in Kenya. But for the purposes of this conversation today, I'm going to talk about the media. So you can refer to me as a feminist journalist for the evening.
Wow. Thank you so much for all introductions. The conversation today is This Is Why. Of course, on femicide, gender-based violence, and the challenge of making a safer society for the women of Kenya. And as I said earlier, it is in the week or the eve of the march that's going to be happening on the 10th of December 2024. Of course, women and men join the streets to, of course, make sure that their voices are heard, and of course, against femicide today. At least 500 women were murdered by their intimate partners in Kenya between January 2016 and December 2023. This year alone, over 100 cases of femicide, gender-based violence, have already been reported. This conversation is relevant. And this conversation, I'd like to give just a PSA, is a very emotive conversation. And, you know, every part of society has to participate in this conversation, whether it be the government, whether it be the church, or us ourselves as citizens. So as emotive as this conversation is, we also urge each other to, you know, deal with grace as much as we're putting our point across. I understand that this is something that is close to the hearts of women especially, and of course of everyone, because, you know, women are the center of society and the family unit, so this conversation needed to be had. And of course, I wanna start off with, of course, I think I'll start off with Evelyn Tina, of course, feminist in Kenya. Quick question though. Whenever you have to explain the word feminist, how did that conversation go? Because I feel like, you know, it's one of the most misunderstood names in today's society.
I think every time I have to introduce myself as a feminist, I'm often misunderstood. I'm mistaken for a man-hater, for someone who doesn't love families, for someone who wants to distort society, and for someone who wants to lead women astray. For the people who understand, it's often an easy conversation, I would say, because they understand why we agitate, why we identify as feminists. But for the people who have been conditioned by society, or for the people whose opinion of women and women who identify as feminists is skewed or informed by misinformation. It's a really terrible conversation, often ends up in, if not tears, insults, or broken relationships. Yeah.
So I'm glad you're here today. You'll be able to explain the term feminist, though I am one of the people who uses that terminology. Thank you so much for joining us. This is Waise Solonka.
Yes.
Kindly introduce yourself.
My name is Waise Solonka. I'm the legal officer and project lead at AJA Kenya, which is a legal aid organization that serves the wrongfully accused persons that are held in pretrial remand. So a lot of my work actually involves men. And I'm happy to have a conversation about it. How do the men in our lives play a part, and how are they involved in the lives and things that affect women, and how that has contributed to our justice system, how it looks like in prison. Yeah.
Thank you for that. We've just said this is the wake of, or rather the eve of tomorrow's demonstration. Earlier this year, I joined the streets. I was among the people on the streets alongside many other women I can see in the crowd and even on my panel today. And of course, the march was against femicide. How important and how significant, Njeri, if you may, is tomorrow's march?
We began this year with a march. We are ending the year with another march, which means whatever we agitated for in January of this year, January 27, has not been fulfilled in any way. In actual fact, the numbers are rising, they're higher, and nothing seems to have moved or changed or shaken. So this is a very important march. We are marching for our lives, literally.
Clearly the numbers have gone up. I wonder what will happen after we march. But Patricia, what is the significance of tomorrow's march? Is it essential? Do we need to do it? Or are we just, wasting our time in the streets again?
I think just to add to what Njeri has said, part of the fear that I'm having is like what happened with corruption, where we were reporting so many corruption cases in the news that it got to a point that people were numb. People hear 100 million is stolen, they're like, oh, this time it's not 5 billion, And I'm even worried when we discuss this with a number, that it may get to a point where people become numb to a number because it's starting to become so common, something that is reported in the news almost every other day. And that's why I think it's important that we keep speaking, we keep talking about it, we keep acting. If we need to do a march every year, if we need to do 2 marches every year until we start seeing signs of change, yeah, it's very important for us to do so.
And I like something I think I saw on the Kenya Feminist page. It says it's not a statistics, it's a human.
Exactly.
It's just numbers, it's human beings.
Yeah.
I like that perspective that you've just highlighted. Venerable Brian Odhiambo, who speaks for the church, how significant, first of all, how did you feel about the march that happened earlier this year on Femicide, and how do you feel about the march that's going to be happening tomorrow?
I would say I hold quite a bit of a different view. While I do appreciate the marches and I do appreciate that public action to show what we stand for and what we feel, after studying society for a while, you come to realize that it doesn't really create so much change in people's behaviors. It creates awareness, and as she has mentioned, it makes people numb to the reality of what is happening. We recently had the protest with the corruption issues. I don't think much changed. We are aware things are corrupt, things are not good, but nothing has changed per se. And so I feel over and above us doing the marches, there needs to also be a plan on how to go to the systems that create behavior change and begin transforming society from that point, over and above going to the public spaces to express this is what we stand for. What else are we doing over and above the marches to be able to get to where society is in a way that their character and their attitudes and their behaviors and their perspectives about some of the issues that is being agitated for is being changed from. We can go and march, but then does everyone get to see and understand what it is that we are marching for? Do they just take it as another protest and social disturbance, an inconvenience to their day-to-day routines? But have we been able to get to the space that touches them and is able to address their concerns in a way that they know, oh, we need to actually change our behaviors in matters concerning femicide, in gender-based violence and all that? So for me, I feel it is good to create awareness, but we need to go an extra mile in terms of getting to the right spaces and institutions where behavior is shaped. Thank you.
And I hear you loud and clear, though the significance is still, it's still something I think everyone has to play a part in creating awareness is very relevant. Solonka, what do you think is so significant about tomorrow's march?
I think I'm encouraged by people that believe, whether it's delusional or naivety, that you believe that your voice matters. And I think an encouragement would be in the belief and in the faith that if we stand together, if we march together, if we speak about something loud enough, if we speak about something consistently enough, that this actually counts for something. And whether it moves the needle forward by 5 steps and we need 100 steps, I think the 5 play in the part of the 100. So it's not that the march is irrelevant or not significant. It's hopefully one of the things we're doing to end gender-based violence. So it's not that the march stands on its own, that it stands amongst other things. So we need all of it. Like we need the change in behavior, and I'm agreeing with the sorry, I said Reverend. Yeah, and I agree with you completely. I think the problem is when we want things to stand on their own and to bring complete change. So it's not that the march is wrong or right, it's that it's a part of something. So I think when things, all of them work together, then it's useful. That there's behavioral change, there's awareness, there's policy impact, there's all of it. And I think all of it is needed.
The strength in numbers is something we cannot ignore. The demonstrations of June 25th literally moved the thought of the government in a different direction, and even the whole world. So the strength in numbers that women and men, and that's why I keep on highlighting, and men need to join the march tomorrow, will show a difference in how we move. The numbers is something that we cannot ignore. And we don't want to place a lot of highlight on the numbers yet. We want to begin with where femicide starts. A discussion I had with one of my able directors and producers of the social newsroom, and by the way, thank you so much for everyone who's watching us at home, is that we discovered that femicide is the result of GBV. So we go back to where this all begins, GBV. The issues that surround GBV. Is it a structural issue? Is it a cultural issue? Is it a socio-economical issue? Let me start with Elvin Tena. Do you feel like GBV is the cause-effect of femicide?
Yes, I feel like femicide is an escalation of GBV. Yeah, I think it begins from somewhere. It begins from teaching boys or men that they have power over women, that they have to, stamp their power by beating women, by doing something to show that they have power over them. So yes, I believe I believe femicide is an escalation of GBV. Yeah.
You have highlighted on the cultural issue, teaching boys. And of course, one of the most significant things we can tell about culture is also religion, and the role that religion plays in cultural issues. And I'm glad you're here, because then you will highlight on GBV and the role of the church in that.
I totally agree with that for a long time, and probably even up to now, religion plays a very key role in perpetuating stereotypes that lead to gender-based violence. One, in terms of how do they define the gender roles, the men and women, their position, their theological interpretation of who God is in relation to men, women, and children. And when these are instilled in us from an authority that ideally we cannot question or people have been taught that you are not supposed to question religion and religious authority. And then over time, you come to realize that the roles are changing. So there's a threat to this power that has been held by men or boys, and how do they reclaim their position? Sometimes it's through violence, to assert their point to a gender that they feel is being empowered more than them and to take up their place. Society also plays a key role because religion doesn't exist in a vacuum. Religion is often expressed through culture. So you find the culture already has empowered the boy over the girl and shows them that you are supposed to have authority over them. Religion stamps the same. And now as society changes...
How does religion stamp the same?
One, in our views about God, in the way it expresses the position of men, which, like I said, is also cultural. I mean, the Bible is more of a Jewish culture and Roman culture and all that. But we don't have the time or the capacity for many believers to remove the Word of God from the culture that it is expressed in. Ideally, it is supposed to be that we take the Word of God and put it in our own cultures and contexts. But many of us read the culture as part of the authority that we are supposed to be following. And now, when we interpret it that way, then it means that it's easy for us to be misinterpreting what God intended for men and women and equity. Not equality, but equity. And we feel it's supposed to be a power structure, God, men, and women. And so when that role seems to be changing, and this person feels that they're being disempowered from their position, most of them, if probably they don't have another way of defending themselves, end up reacting in a violent way. Now that can go in many directions. Economically, it can be socially, it can be in relationships, and GBV is expressed in all these areas that I've mentioned and many more. And all of it is usually more of a power struggle between men and women. So I believe that's simply how I can put it. So religion, culture works hand in hand to create these stereotypes that lead to violence. And of course, that violence can escalate to femicide when not checked early.
The cultural aspect, of course, has been highlighted by Venerable Brian Odhiambo, who is of the ACK. But we cannot deny that socioeconomic issues and structural issues also surround GBV. One of the biggest champions of could say of GBV. Is it no, sorry, wrong wording. One of the biggest civil society speakers today keep on highlighting the fact that GBV will continue being an issue if these issues are not countered. Jerry Mwigwe, who is of course of Kimwe, and I have to say a big thank you to Jerry. She does a lot of work with women and men and children on this very issue, which is one of the most prevalent issue, would say. Is it structural, is it a cultural issue, or is it a social economic issue, GBV?
With GBV, you have to look at it holistically because social, political, economic issues all contribute to gender-based violence. In what ways? When the political climate is hostile, when economic changes go downward, gender-based violence increases. Cultural norms have spoken, and I'm glad the Venerable Reverend has spoken about it, contribute when we practice certain social norms, right? And these social norms also contribute into how the family is looked at on that structure. I hate the fact that we talk about disempowerment when power cannot be taken away, right? If you are empowered, you're empowered. Nobody's coming because Njeri now is empowered. It doesn't mean that the men have been disempowered because it's not cake, that when it is cut, it's been taken away from you. And I wish that could be the way the conversation is taken forward. However, when we have an economic downturn, the people, the biggest casualty of that economic downturn are women and children. Again, when there are social changes, and you can look at it like, say, for example, during the pandemic, COVID, the most affected people were, again, women and children because of what was happening in the country and what was going on. Most women got to stay at home with their families, and suddenly I realized I don't like you as much as I thought I did. And really, the violence in Kenya escalated up to 126%. So that also tells you how all of these things contribute towards gender-based violence.
It is important to also highlight the fact that for the first time in a long time, the government has taken a step to show its concern, and even the church has decided to speak up on this issue. Although we might feel indifferent to some of the views, how do you feel about the government's position right now with speaking against, of course, GBV? I think we were about to wrap up 16 days of against gender-based violence and activism. How do you feel about the president's speech, and of course even the initiative of safe homes, safe spaces, which was launched by the president? How do you feel about that?
Let me be politically correct. What we need the president to do and to say is not what he's doing. You don't throw money against a crisis. You name it, you shame it, you tame it. Now, the 100 million that was given by the president, what is it for? How is it budgeted? Who does it go to? How does it work?
Sorry, let me just highlight. I'm not defending, I'm just highlighting.
No, he did that as well. During his speech, he said he's giving 100 million. You mentioned safe homes. That's why I'm saying what he did. He threw money against a problem, right? This money is undocumented. We don't know how the money is supposed to cascade downwards. That's one. Two, we don't need the president to speak and just say femicide. We need him to actually say this is a national crisis. Because when we name it, then that money, instead of throwing it around, we can now take the money and start doing research. What is happening? What is making femicide become we are looking at a woman a day. Why are women being killed? What can we do? What is the data? We now start doing data. We start doing research. We start enacting policies. We start looking at it as a problem that it is. But when you just speak of it, and on his speech, and I can quote some of the speech, he did, in fact, victim blame, and he did, in fact, gaslight women. Because when you say that girls are out there and they're going into dangerous situation, when actively, I can remind you that some of the cases which we have handled, most of them are actually intimate partner related. So it's not a lot of strangers. So I need the government to actually look at what we are saying, do their own research, so that when we are speaking in the same voice.
It's important to highlight that, all these views are essentially meant to either steer the conversation, actually to steer the conversation to the right way, not have a divisive agreement at the end of it. One of the things we did while we're having this discussion, of course, is to invite the DPP's office, because we do understand also this is a structural issue. What is the government doing? They gave out a couple of shillings to help out with this. What is the judiciary doing? And I think because we might not have the DPP's office here today, but we have someone close to the DPP's office. African Justice Restoration Kenya, AJA, which you work for. When you look at the structural issue that is dealing with GBV issues that are, brought to court, the processing of the charges, the prosecution, how and what role have you played and what have you seen so far with cases to do with femicide in 2024?
I guess, I can speak on the justice system side of things. And our justice systems, I'm wondering where to start. But so we have the penal code. So a lot of our laws were created during colonial periods. So a lot of it is not updated or does not fit into what is happening currently. So for instance, if there's a gender-based violence issue, it would be named something else. It would be assault, grievous bodily harm. So even the naming of it would change because there's no sentencing for gender-based violence, right? So there's no specific name for what is, for what has happened here. So if you call it assault or grievous bodily harm, it would be treated differently, say, in front of a court of law, because the evidence will just be looked at as if it's another case. But here the mens rea or the motive here was not, because assault could be caused by, we were having a fight or whatever, but the femicide and gender-based violence is specifically driven by the fact that you're female and I am male, right? It's our genders are the ones who are the main characters here coming into play. So I think even with the justice system, I think there should be a place where the penal code is revised. And even in the police station, when someone comes to report a gender-based violence, I know some police stations have a specific person that you speak to, even with the cases with children and even now with the cases with gender-based violence. But it's not the same for every police station. So if I am a woman and I was assaulted and I come to report the case, my situation, where I am mentally, emotionally, what I've had to deal with, what it has taken me to come in to report, needs to be treated differently. It's not like a regular charge that I'm coming to report. I could be reporting an intimate partner, a father, a husband, and so it needs to be handled differently than this is just a charge I'm reporting. And even when it comes to court, so I think they've done this with children. They sometimes have something we call closed court sessions, where a child, the court will be closed and other strangers would not be invited in, and they really take care of the children. I think even in gender-based violence cases, they should do the same. I think even in court, the victim should have a counselor, someone, great support. What does it look like if this case is not won? What if the case, because what has happened is sometimes the court finds the perpetrator innocent, and you've already started the matter. How do you go back to live together? What does that look like? And even if they are charged, their sentencing ends. So the person that you put behind bars comes out. And so what does that look like for the person that reported this issue? How are we protecting them? What are we doing about it? How are we rehabilitating? Even the people that have been arrested and charged with assault that involves gender-based violence in prison, and when they're being reprimanded, is there specific things we're doing to make sure they're being rehabilitated differently? Because what led them to bring violence to women? What do they think about women? What has happened there? Or are we just like putting them together with all the other offenders of different charges? So if someone has, their charge was gender-based violence, and I think it should be named that instead of assault, how are we rehabilitating them? How are we training them? Because the sentence ends. It ends and they come back. And so even if there's anger sometimes of the victim that led this person to then go to jail, what do we do for that woman when they come back to such a society? That people are upset that you put our friend in jail, you destroyed their reputation and their name. So even when you come back, like as a woman that was brave enough, reported to speak out, what are we doing with to support, empower, teach them, even when this case eventually moves to the justice system?
I hear you, and I'd like to send out a question, ask a question to our audience today. Thank you so much for joining us, and also watching us at home. Thank you so much. This is the Social Newsroom. Remember, the conversation today is why us. I would like to ask the audience. We said this is a structural issue, and one of the biggest structures that run us is the government. Do you feel like the government is doing enough? Do you feel like the government is doing enough? Anyone in the audience? And what more can they do? I think that is the bigger question. What more can they do? We had someone who wanted to actually answer that question. What more can they do? Do you think the government has done enough, and what more can they do? Your name? Please stand up. Please stand up.
My name's Lucy Mombi Shahenza, known as Fatma. First of all, the government is not doing enough. Reason. And I would like to say where I have come from, so that as I answer the question, maybe you can be able to understand me better. I'm working with Community Safety Project as the founder and the director. And I'm also one of the initiators of IPPO, International Patriotic Pact organization. First of all, the government is not focused on women. That is on my side, in my view. This is because as we advocate for women, as we talk about the rights of women, as we elaborate more about women, as we speak of how our young people are dying, I think everybody in the government, their ears are broken. At the same time, they are not focused with women. I have heard somebody saying that voice matters. It is very true. Voice matters. But from who and where? We have so many reasons why we are not happy with the government. As we can see, we have the Rose Society of Kenya. We have the activists in our country. We have women who are coming forward to advocate more about women. But at the end of the day, even to the media people, I'm going to blame you also. Because we need, instead of seeing the magazines or hearing the news talking about women, how women are being violated when it comes to fight of the house. As you know, when climate change is changing globally, you can also know that all these changes are coming to women. Particularly when you look at women, they are to those men who go to work and they leave their women at home. That person started giving you 100 shillings to buy cabbage or something else. He has not added. So even when it comes to climate change, women are more affected. I don't see what the government is doing because we need to see each and everything that is happening. Particularly, instead of hiding women who are dying, instead of hiding the young people who are dying, we want them to come clear and tell us what they have, what they focus. The working group, where is the working group in the government advocating about women? I'm so sorry for asking those questions. Sorry.
No, thank you so much. The questions are needed. Where are the numbers? That's exactly what she's asking. We have another one with a question as well. Please stand up as the mic is being brought to you. Introduce yourself and what you think the government is doing. Are they doing enough? Are they doing nothing? What can they do?
Good evening. My name is Naisula Sironka. I am with Feminists in Kenya. And for sure, the government is not doing enough. And our demands still remain the same, like we presented them in January while we marched, that the government declare femicide a national emergency. Yes, that the government declare femicide a national emergency. Secondly, that femicide is recognized as a crime in the penal code. We are still asking the government to work with feminists and feminist organizations, right, to form a commission that will see a way forward to address all forms of violence towards women. We're still asking the Director of Criminal Investigations to prioritize femicide cases, because if you look at the investigations or the femicide cases and the ones that have been closed or justice has been served in one or another, they do not match up to the number of women who've been killed, right? And we are also asking the media to report responsibly when it comes to femicide cases. So those still remain our demands, and it feels almost impossible to remain hopeful that a violent regime would do something about femicide.
Thank you for that highlight, Naisula. If you have any questions as well online, the social newsroom is live on Facebook and other platforms. Kindly leave your questions there and your comments. She highlighted something that we need to get into, media and technology, which is one of the biggest way to broadcast the news today. I usually tell people I found out about one of the biggest terrorists being taken or killed through social media before I saw it on the news. So media and technology are the ones that carve the narrative. Patricia, I have to ask you, because at Odipodev, data and journalism is at the core of your conversation. What role are you playing, or do you feel you can play better to, of course, further the story or the conversation of GBV and femicide?
I mean, at the moment, the role that we're playing is to try and expand the illustration of what the intensity of the matter is on the ground as well as we possibly can, improving like the range of what can I say, data that we collect. So what we did previously was that we collected data from all media sources across Kenya and looked at all the stories that are coming up on femicide, how many are they? One of the things we're trying to do is to make sure we also capture what is happening on the ground. The impact that this has is that when people are having this conversation, they have a reference point. And we've seen people from all over the world using this reference point because previously they did not have it. How can we do this better? I think it's bringing in as many players as possible to play the same, to have the same goal and play the same role. Because what we're seeing is that this conversation and activism against this matter has become so fragmented that it's not being impactful. The fact that we're coming back a year later and asking for the same things might point towards like the impact of this fragmentation. And so even as journalists, as data journalists and as researchers, I think it's very important for me to constantly be on call with Jerry, with people who are on the ground, people who are dealing with the legal side of it. All of us need to work very closely together to ensure that we are focused on the same goal. Yeah.
I like that. Of course, there's power in numbers and there's power in working together. There's something she highlighted, Naisula highlighted, the fact that we need people who are participating in the conversation, whether it's Feminist Kenya, whether it's Usikime, whether it's Africa Justice Restoration, whether it's the church, to be participating with the government to either carve the law towards the right conversation or participate actively. But at the center of it are the people who create the narrative, the media. The media has been seen to play one of the biggest roles, either to change the story or to destroy the story. And I ask this with a little bit of a personal take in it. Do you feel like we have romanticized femicide? Because the conversations around femicide, especially and how it is reported and our responsibility, are the reason as to why we might be having a counter conversation every time we go to social media. Evelyn.
Elvin. The media has romanticized violence and femicide. Earlier this year, when we were planning for the march, I decided I want to do something with my skill as a journalist and write a story. So I went online to do my research, and I found a lot of articles that talk about the dressing, the appearance, the character, where the victims were. I also happened to find a very interesting rhetoric in our society now, which is slay queen. And there were at least 10 articles published by leading media stations in the country that are talking about slay queens. And most of them define slay queens as people who pout their lips when they take a selfie, people who apply makeup, the girls who post photos from nice restaurants. It was really disturbing, because as a young journalist, I was asking myself, who clears these stories for editing? Who allows this to happen? Who sits down to write a story talking about a girl they met, and because they said no to their sexual advances, they're a slay queen. And it goes beyond just romanticizing. It goes deep into, sort of trying to get sympathy for the perpetrators. Because I also remember meeting an article that was trying to sort of clear Ivy Wangeshi's perpetrator, trying to speak to neighbors and say he was this kind of person. We never thought he could harm anyone. Ivy must have done something really bad to warrant his actions. So, and even beyond that, I remember reading about Rita Waine's story, and up to now, when I'm speaking about violence or GBV, I have to feel my nails my fingernails, because of how that story was described, because of how the writer decided to center, the gruesome acts that happened to her, and not why was that happening to her. Yeah, so I feel like the media, in a rush to, break the news and get views or traction, it has resorted to romanticizing stories of violence. Yeah.
The media has to play its role, and of course to share the news to the world. And there's something I highlighted personally on Twitter, is that some of the cases that were reported were, clickbait kind of stories. But something Jerry Migwe actually posted on her Twitter was that some of the stories that are not highlighted are more than what is seen. Where is the discourse between the stories that are highlighted versus the ones on the ground?
I believe the ones that are highlighted are the more gruesome ones, the more that gets you the views, the more that people will click to. Not the woman that was just strangled by her husband. That one is not, gory enough for the kind of, viewership that people want, and that is a problem. Because you will find that majority of the stories, sometimes they don't even go deep into the places where the stories are covered. And unfortunately for me, I deal with facts because I am on the ground. So you will find, like on Friday, we had somebody in Kisauni, Mombasa. Her husband stabbed her to death. She was reported dead at the hospital, and she was buried the same day. So nobody covered it. Nobody knows it. That's a case that will go unreported. And so you find uko kwa mtaa, a 76-year-old grandmother was, raped and strangled to death. That will not be reported. It's not newsworthy enough. It doesn't really carry, the tag that, like how Rita was killed or how Starlet was killed. So it doesn't give it that story, that angle that will make people click onto it very quickly and read it and discuss it and have conversations around it. So it takes away what would be probably viewership. I don't know. But I feel like the way we report femicide is very questionable. The way we report cases of gender-based violence is also very, very questionable.
I think this is really surrounding framing, the framing of the stories themselves. And one of the biggest framers of stories is the church and the conversation. I have to bring Venerable Brian Odhiambo on this. The framing of a woman, according to the good book, kind of dehumanizes. Sometimes humanizes her and sometimes dehumanizes it. The framing of this persona who brings life, but yet still the victim of GBV, then femicide. What conversation should be had differently when it comes to framing of GBV and femicide and with the church, because, of the role you play?
Allow me to say that I believe that a big part of the church is actually doing a lot in terms of addressing GBV and femicide, and that's by going back to the family unit and what it is supposed to be like and how relationships should be, and also in terms of helping the individual to understand that life has disappointments, and sometimes you succeed, sometimes you fail, and that can also be interpreted in the context of relationships. If as a man you get rejected, you necessarily don't have to kill to get your way. But of course, there are also some of us who misinterpret scripture. Sometimes we want to victimize the victims by trying to find fault in them. Were they dressed modestly as they should and as the church teaches? What did they do to put themselves in that situation that led them to whatever happened? And so you find that in that context, instead of trying to address the issue, they want to protect maybe the man and also try to victimize, to try to point fingers on the ladies as being people who caused that on themselves, which I think happens in society also in general. But the conversation should actually be these men who do that. What is the underlying problem that they're struggling with, and how can we be able to address it by bringing them to a point where they understand that you do not necessarily have to have what you want. I mean, if you're seeking a relationship in a lady and she says no, just let it go. Having said that as well, how do we handle even the domestic violence issue? Because I think that's also another major area where we have a lot of say in. The church, of course, has a stand where marriages are not supposed to break. And so I know some of us clergy would have a case where you know there's assault or abuse going on in a marriage or in a family setup, and would encourage one of the spouses to, or the lady actually, to be patient and to just hang in there and to try and cover the family unit. So I believe in doing that, we are actually creating an environment where femicide occurs and more gender-based violence occurs. And I believe in our context, we need to encourage more of our clergy to be sensitive to the realities of what is going on. If someone's life is in danger, we need to be able to boldly tell that person, you need to get a safe space. And if we also, to be good people, be able to create that safe space for them to come to. Because it's also easy to tell someone, go to a safe space, but where is that safe space? If they go back to their families, the family is a society with the same culture that we are trying to protect. So they'll tell them, go back to your family, go back to the same place where your life is being endangered. So as a church, I believe we need to be able to step up, because speaking is one thing, giving solutions is another thing, but being able to practically give a solution in terms of, if you are not safe where you are, feel free to come here. We'll be able to take care of you as we also try to address the issues that are putting you at risk. And I believe, yes, we are doing a lot in terms of teaching and training and trying to shape the minds, but I still feel on this matter, and same as many other issues, we should be able to do way more than we're doing by opening our arms more to welcome those who are in vulnerable situations.
Quite precise. We've been waiting for the church to speak for a very long time. Although a little bit late to the party, but thank you. I want to take this to the audience. The language we are using, either it be on social media or in our social groups, the language we are using, mambo ya watu wawili. I know you've heard that before, because when a fight begins, it always either spreads in the apartment block or the plot. You know, the landlord heard, the caretaker heard, someone heard something happening. But then everyone turns a blind eye because of mambo ya watu wawili, the language on the ground. And I'd want anyone in the audience to tell me how they feel the language we speak when it comes to relationships and GBV is actually affecting us. So if you'd like to, give your opinion on that, kindly put your hands up and we'll get the mic to you. Oh, already we have one up already. The language that we are using on the ground, is it, adding up to what is happening right now?
Oh, good evening. I'm Tobias Sorao. I come from Gate Foundation. It is based in Mathare, and I'm a member of the Social Justice Centers. So the language first, even from here, we call the survivors victims. That is the first language. Another thing, the language that the government or people do realize is that if you talk bad, you try to make yourself not to cope up with, to be in that situation so that you want to run away from it. And it is very dangerous, because if you don't treat them as survivors, then it means we call them victims. So we can say any word. You are trying to seek for audience, and that is not good. So even the government has to come up with the strategies of how they can help the survivors, because even those who are sitting at the gender desk are not well equipped in terms of trainings, so they do not know, they do not understand what they are doing. And also the society does not want to believe such things are happening, of which the way Percy said, that we need a behavior change, not just awareness and advocacy, but behavior change will drive things at our smaller spaces at home. What do we talk about? If these things happen, do we talk about them the way they are supposed to be talked about, or we leave them to the professionals so that they can, like the teachers, so that because they are the masters? Yeah.
The conversation on the ground. Thank you so much, Tobias, for that. The language we are using, is it affecting how we're dealing with GBV and femicide?
Okay, Treza Tieno. I'm going to talk specifically the term mambo ya watu wawili, the way you said. So we are taking that term so casually, especially from us who are on the other end of the keyboard. If we see a situation online and the first thing we see, they go through a rough time and then they make up. The first thing we say is mambo ya watu wawili, okay? So my point of view is, if someone is a victim and they're going through something and they make up, when you're a victim, maybe that's what you're used to. Maybe that's your normalcy. And if you look into many relationships, you'll see these people are used to this thing and they can't do without, or they don't know anything different. So when they get themselves into, maybe you sit aside, you take your break, and then that person, the same person who assaulted you, is coming and apologizing. That's what you're used to. So you find yourself going back. That makes people say, mambo ya watu wawili. But as a society, we need to be very keen at looking at victims, because I don't need to scream for you to know I need help, okay? So if something happens once, twice, thrice, and I keep on going, people will say, okay, watch her end, and then when she's fed up, she'll eventually come out. And what if I come out dead? That's what happens.
Watch our game talking.
Yeah.
That's one of the narratives they're using.
So most people say, watch her, let her keep going in, let him or her, I don't want to specify, but in this case, we're talking about women, let him or her go back until she cannot go back anymore, okay? That's when people say, wacha mambo ya watu wawili. But I want us to be keen at noticing that mambo ya watu wawili needs someone to intervene. If you see your friend or someone close to you is becoming too blind to see, ama the situation is becoming too sticky for them to get out, say it as many times as you can. Tell them once, tell them twice. I know ladies will say, nitakwambia tu lakini bado utarudi. But akirudi and that happens again, tell them again. Make it make sense to them. They need an outer eye for them to recognize what is going on inside.
Thank you so much for that. Wacha mambo ya watu wawili tena now, and now wacha ongee mtoke are one of the common terms we use. We have two ladies as well who want to tell us about the conversation on the ground, the language we are using. Is it one of the reasons as to why women are not speaking up? Is it why some of these cases are not reported? Your name and your opinion.
Yes, my name is Mary Modeu from Musikime. I mentor there, a leader in the community. Mambo ya watu wawili. This story of mambo ya watu wawili is becoming too much. When you say mambo ya watu wawili, then when you are two, every time mambo ya watu wawili, you don't want another person to intervene. It becomes another thing. It brings this thing we call femicide. Most of the times we have seen people saying, mambo yetu ni ya mimi na wewe, unaingilia wapi? So, when somebody says unaingilia wapi, you have to think twice. Why unaingilia wapi? Like me, when somebody tells me unaingililia wapi katikati yangu na bibi yangu. It makes me understand that there is something wrong between the lady and the man. So I have to take a step of bringing them down and digging and to know what was the cause and what is going on. Then I refer the case to the office for counseling. Yeah.
Thank you for that. We had another hand as well. Kindly tell us your opinion. What do you think about the language we are using? And is it also making some of us scared enough not to speak out?
Hi. Sorry. So hi, my name is Lynn. I'm from Usikimia. And when you speak of language, the aspect that I thought about, and I've not had it being brought up, and I think it's very important, is how our police officers or people in authority address our victims. And we've
just been taught they're called survivors. Sorry.
Yeah, so I think that's a very important aspect when we are providing informed trauma response. So I think the way you handle a victim when they're reporting such cases is very vital to, first of all, their mental health. And I think the way especially our female police officers, I think they need to be more informed or educated on how to handle victims of such things, because I feel like when you hear such cases, it prevents people from reporting, and many cases go underreported. So I think that's also another vital aspect that I would love to bring out. Yeah.
A lot of education has to be done on the ground as well, and even to the police officers. I think that's why one of the roles of the DPP's office, prosecution, was to do that, actually educate the police officers on how and what languages need to be done. I think even or rather I hope, one of the initiatives, which is Safe Homes and Safe Spaces by the government, was to increase the gender desks in police stations. So I don't know if it is effective or not. We don't have the government here to answer us that question. But there's a perspective, Wazir Solonka, you mentioned. When the perpetrator goes back to the society, there are two people here, the survivor and the perpetrator. And you go out of your way sometimes to bail out some of the perpetrators. Innocent perpetrators. Oh, we have to highlight that. Yeah, not the guilty ones. Okay, thank you for that. Going back to society, because you see, society, and that's, you see, the conversation of Mamba Watu Wawili is going back to the father of your children, going back to the wife who battered you, because the conversation of GBV goes both ways. The going back, I want you to highlight on that.
I think I'm going to sound like I'm repeating myself, but I don't know if there's space in society for, I don't know if we talk about it where there's space for, like, now that now that this has happened, how do we move forward? What is there room for? I would even dare say, is there room for forgiveness and actual rehabilitation? Do we trust that the systems that we have in place, that someone was in prison, that they have completely understood what they did wrong, and they're therefore a completely different person? And I don't know if we are, even when we are bringing retribution and punishment, and people have to answer for the wrongs that they did, I don't know if our prison systems, our arresting officers, investigating officers, the prosecution, the courts, are long-sighted, or are we very short-sighted? Because what long-sightedness does, when there is actual change in the person that has caused this horrendous crime, is that it creates a society in the future that looks very different. So I think even with our rehabilitation, because I work in prison, so I'm in male prisons probably every other week. And I haven't seen, because what it does when you do a rehabilitation well, you have to hold space for the person that has suffered the consequence of what had happened. So if they have been accused and they are serving their time, but once they leave, they have no concept or understanding of what they had done wrong, it brings us to the same place. This person comes back, and even sometimes they're like, that wasn't so bad. I'm glad that I'm back. It wasn't even a big deal. Like, even the character change has not happened. And so what it encourages is, even if I am arrested, even if I am found guilty, this is not a big deal. I'll get out and I'll be fine. And I'll continue doing whatever I did. I'll remarry, I'll find someone else. So it's because, like, in the prison system, and when people are being reprimanded and punished, there's no character change. There's no, this is the consequence of what you have done. This is what it has caused. This is what it has brought to society and this person. It's just serve your time and leave, right? So there's no actual behavioral change. And if I think there was, I think there's space for, I think then the conversation could change. There could even be conversation for how does it look for someone to apologize, to be forgiven, to be rehabilitated well, because I think forgiveness also heals. It's an assumption I'm making. It heals slightly the pain of the person that was affected. But you cannot forgive someone that has not, it's difficult to forgive someone that has not changed. Yeah, and so I think if there's no training and environments that are created by the justice system for this person to have an actual character change, because a lot of, like, some of it, let me not say in completely, the people that commit these crimes, some people that I have met, there are many reasons that they commit crimes that they're committing. Many reasons, many reasons. Some are their own personal choice, some aren't. So are we asking what led this person to commit this crime, and how can we help them become better people? And I think because we are not asking that question, we are just saying, serve the 5 years and then come out. And this person becomes the same person, if not worse, than they were before they were arrested. So I think our prison system is a little bit lazy, because that would mean that we care for people. That means that we are concerned about people. That would mean that it requires work and effort and partnership, and it requires more than just serve your time and then finish. It would require that the government and the justice system actually cares for its people.
The justice system, which is vital in this fight against femicide and GBV, have to play their role, and we have seen what they have done. Some of the things that they have done is set up the GBV courts, and of course it was very significant to be done in certain areas as well. I came to understand there in Mombasa, Kisumu, and Siaya as well, which was seen as some of the hot spots for gender-based violence. But being on the ground and the criminal justice system and how it deals with it is the question that we want to understand. Jerry, when you're dealing with these cases, when you're actually dealing with these cases, what happens in the criminal justice system from the police office, from the station all the way to court?
How victims are handled at the police. Largely, it starts there. You've reported a case. Sometimes you're even told to go get the rapist. I am being very honest. There are very many times you're told, no, kuja na uwe rapist, so I don't know how you're supposed to go get a rapist. I understand. I want to be both the voice of reason as well as also the devil's advocate here, because I understand that a lot of times police have seen so many of these things, so many of these incidents, they become desensitized. I mean, nobody ever offers them psychosocial support of any kind. So this person has seen a defiled child, has seen a woman beaten, has seen a murdered person. Then now we are coming there, me and my victim, and then I'm being told, is he serious? Especially domestic issues and intimate partner violence, it is not treated as something that is very serious. Most of the time, God forbid, if you have gone, you were beaten before, you came, you reported, you went back, because we don't take into account the psychological effects of all of this. We don't take into account that there's trauma bonding. We don't take into account that there's so many reasons why you didn't report. And so the person starts feeling the pressure from the higher. Now you report, have to go, make sure you go to hospital, get your forms. It is the onus of the victim in the criminal system of Kenya to show, unfortunately for GBV, to show that, you know, this happened to me. I have a bruise, I have this, and sometimes somebody has been really, really injured, we have to go look for the police surgeon, right? Oh, it's not that easy. So you've reported now. Now this I'm giving you an IPV, you know, issue, not like sexual violence. So now you've reported, you've been umekatakatwa. You have to go look for the police surgeon. Now the police surgeon is one in Nairobi. He's based here, Nairobi area. Nairobi area is the one near Kenyatta. He's not just looking at you, the GBV victim. He's also looking at other victims like accidents. He's looking at other issues. So you and your GBV problems, you are huko. Nobody, like you can go stay there. Remember you're hurting. You have to go there. He has to take pictures. His pictures are what is considered evidence, not anything else. In as much as he will take pictures of your bruises and injuries, he's the final word. He has to sign your P3. It is almost impossible, unless you go there week after week at 5 in the morning, to actually get him to sign you off. Higher. Now your P3 is filled, the doctor has signed, you've gone, the assault has been done, he has checked, all these things are done. Now you come back to the police station, now they do a file, they do a charge sheet. Now this is what we go with, the police come with to the courts. Now you are in the courts. Sindio? Now you start the hearing. It's not the hearing. So when you get to court, of course, they'll call out your case, and then you will be given a further date of mention. When you're supposed to come, the person will come and enter plea, if he's available to enter plea. Now, when it comes to cases of intimate partner violence, and correct me if I'm wrong, we had somebody who was really badly beat. I thought she was going to die. Do you know the perpetrator was given 10,000 shillings for bond? And so, he paid, and they left, and he came and laughed at us. So, that is intimate partner violence. Now, if it is cases of sexual violence, the same. So you have to go to hospital. Most of the time, when you have been raped or a child has been defiled, the very first action, most victims, and I use victims and survivors interchangeably here because victims are still going through it and survivors have left. That is why we use those interchangeably. So in this case, you've gone, you've been raped. The first thing, and it's every human urge, is to shower, is to remove this thing that has happened to this overwhelming urge. I need to wash myself because I feel soiled, I feel dirty. So you're not supposed to do that, okay? So you're supposed to go to hospital so that they can take specimen. It's very important. And I'm using this as a PSA. I'm using this as a public service announcement. Please, if you're raped, kindly do not take a shower. Please do not take those clothes and burn them, as most of you do, or throw them away. Kindly take them, wrap them in, not nylon, newspaper, because we don't have brown paper if you possibly can. You know the one that covers books, or the one that you're given in supermarket, that brown paper. Put your clothes in there, your panties, the clothes you're wearing. That is the only way we can be able to get evidence. So now, are you saying who is supposed to do all these things? The very person who this has happened to them. Because it is, your onus is always upon the victim to prove innocence. So now they come, they go to hospital. Now, very, very important, again, PSA, if you have gone through this, do not go to a private hospital. Please, if you go to a private hospital, we cannot prosecute. Issues of sexual violence must go through public hospital or recognized gender violence recovery centers. So when I say this, level 5, level 4, level 3, please. Gender recovery centers are like, for example, Nairobi Women. Some hospitals do have GVRC, but they're not recognized. So MSF, Nairobi Women, and of course, the county hospitals and government hospitals. When you go there, they will now, check you through. You're going through your trauma, take your specimen. Please remember where they're getting the specimen from. You're already traumatized, you still have to do this, and if they can get the specimen. Without the specimen, how do you prove that person raped you? That is one. Two, how many crime labs do we have in this country that are able to process the evidence that is collected, that is the evidence of the rape? How many do we have that you actually can be able to collect? We have one at the DCI. I will not say anything, I just say there's one at the DCI, we have been told. Then we have the government chemist serving the whole country again. At Kenyatta National Hospital behind there. So now, remember you're just a rape victim, unfortunately. How many do you think they have? And it is not a crime lab that just processes for the victims of rape only. It processes tropical diseases, it processes all manner of viruses that are going on in the country and so many things. So you as the rape victim, how long do you think you will be reached? So I'm just giving you on ground so that you know how hard it is for these things to be prosecuted. Then, chances are, you and your dress, we had a case where the victim stayed with the clothes that she was raped in for a year because the police never collected the evidence. And so by the time we got to court in Makadara, it was not good evidence. It has broken down. It's been a year. So, again, remember, you have to ensure that all these specimens I'm talking about go back to the police, and then now they go back to courts, and now you're prosecuted. Now the waiting starts. We, again, ground people, unfortunately. We have a case, Mary Wambo, 11 years, raped, stabbed, and killed in 2021. We are in 2024, bado tuko mention. We are still at the mention. We've never even got to hearing. It's been how many years? They have buried, they have mourned. We're still in court, we're still at hearing stage. And so it goes on and on until somebody tells him, Jerry, I am not going to pursue this. I am tired. I am traumatized. Because remember, when you stand there, especially for adults, you're looking at your adversary right there between the eyes, and you have to give testimony and say, unless you're a child, then you're protected. But as a woman, you're grown up, utamwangalia hivyo, because we have an adversarial system, and say what he did to you. And he has the chance to ask you questions about what he did. And it is a terrible situation.
Clearly, the journey from police station to hospital to court is one with so many valleys and, all kinds. I won't lie, that it sounds so grim. I almost paused for a minute. I almost stepped out. And I can imagine the work you all do when you hear such grim cases and what you need to do to actually maintain that these cases see the day of light or at least get justice. Some never do, some never will. But then you hear such stories and you understand the reason as to why more and more people don't step forward and speak. And that begs the question of data. Data of what are the numbers now? I know we said we are humans, not statistics. But we need the data so that we can know what we're doing wrong, what can we do right, which areas, either locations, or which areas can we focus more on? What is the data as we speak now?
As we speak, we're still currently collecting the data. The last point we had reached, we had collected up to September, specifically from media reports only. And at that point, it was over 100 cases. Now, please note, this does not include the cases in Kware, which we're still going through a whole process of verifying whether or not they're going to be classified at femicide. This does not include the so-called 97 cases, which we reached out to DCI to confirm the nature of those cases so that we can include them in our database. This does not include the cases after September, and this does not include the cases on the ground that haven't made it to the media. So in reality, this is a very small illustration of the reality of the situation. And hopefully by January, we'll have collected as much as possible to really paint the true picture.
Clearly, there's numbers issues there because the reporting is what would guide the conversation. Another thing that guides the conversation is called media and technology. And as we said earlier at the beginning of the conversation, the language we're using on the ground. Now, I want to take this to the floor, of course, with our audience. The conversation we're having on social media, especially when it surrounds femicide and these issues, always turns into another gender war on the ground, something that I have observed again and again with the rise of the Red Pill movement among even other feminists, extreme feminist conversation as well. The conversation we're having on social media, is it divisive or is it bringing us together? I'd like to take this to the audience right now. If anyone had an opinion on the conversation we're having either on Twitter, because it starts with a report from social media or the media. A lady was found killed or taken or just taken advantage of, and then the conversations now starts to become a gender war on the ground. Anyone in the audience who has an opinion, kindly let me know what you feel. But for now, Tina, please tell me what you think about this, especially because you're coming from a media expert point of view.
I'd like to take on this question, but I see someone in the audience whose perspective I think would be really critical to the conversation. Brilliant.
Good evening. Thank you, Elvin. I didn't think I was going to make input this early, but okay. When it comes to conversations, my name is Brilliant Ruto. I work with GBV Prevention Network Uganda and also Sister Foundation Zambia. And my perspective would be, when it comes to conversations, I think what we've seen currently on, especially, let me say X or Twitter at that, is there's so much victim blaming, stemming from when the media puts out these stories that somebody has been murdered or women or somebody has been killed, a femicide case based on how they package these stories. The very first thing is people, they rush to first make judgment. Most of the time we have clickbaiting reporting, and then people don't read into these stories. The very first thing, I remember we did a story with Elvin a while back around how, we have these conversations around how we have blamed women first before even they become victims of gender-based violence. We have put the blame on women on how they dress, how they speak to men. For example, talk to a man, and the very first thing that when you tell them that somebody has been murdered, what did they do to get murdered? How did they speak to this person so that they got murdered? So when it comes to conversations, there's so much victim blaming, and then two, there's very little sensitivity to these cases of gender-based violence, taking into consideration the fact that, one, these are people that are still going through trauma, and then two, we have made it like a competition. We say that a woman has been killed, and then somebody says, but men are also getting killed. Why are you not speaking about the men that have been killed? And then, recently there was a case of, I think, a man got killed. And instead of people actually coming out to say, to speak against this murder case, people are saying, where are the feminists? Where are the women? You are always very quick to talk about women getting killed. Why are you when men are getting killed? And we have put so much responsibility on women, on feminists, on people that are speaking around these cases. I think it's exhausting. We have made it like a competition when it shouldn't be. What if everybody took up responsibility and said, you know what, we as a community, we are speaking against murder cases. We're speaking about gender-based violence, because when you say gender-based violence, it isn't limited to women getting killed. Yes, I mean, men are also getting killed, but what are you doing about it? Instead of coming on social media to talk about feminists that are not addressing these issues, what are you doing as a person? And yes, I think the conversations are divisive. We have so much wars going, back and forth rather than really addressing these issues that are happening on the ground.
Divisive conversations on ground. Thank you so much, Brilliant, for that. We've had it, of course, on the ground. Undercried is an issue. Undercried is the killing of men. And femicide, we are aware, is the killing of women. especially homicide that is seen to be centered on a certain gender. The conversation on social media turning into a gender war. If you have an opinion, please put your hand up and we'll send the mic to you. But we were with you, Ilavine. The media and the conversation we're having on the ground, it's turning into a gender war. You know, if you've heard someone lost their life, sadly, a young man lost their life in Kitale last week, and the conversation was not to actually find the perpetrator, it was, why are you not speaking for us? So why are we having this gender wars versus the objective?
As a young woman who organizes online, I have come to learn the hard way that the online space has come of age to be an avenue to continue the oppression of women, to continue the power over women, to continue patriarchal systems, to encourage misogyny. So in the instances when we're there and we're saying, you know, we're going to march on date 10 and we want your support, most of the time when you say we want men to come and join us at the march, it's because we believe in humanity as feminists. We believe that we don't hate men. Let me say that. When I'm telling my friends, when I'm telling my brothers or my father who is late, but I want them to come in because I believe that you care. I believe this is not the outcome you'd want for me, for your daughter's friend, or for your sibling. And when now it becomes, you know, why are you quiet when a man is being killed? Why are you, why are you giving me the work to fight for myself and fight for you as well? Why you're being affected now? Why aren't you taking action? Why do you want me to take the action for you? And this speaks to the society that we live in, yeah? That we have normalized violence against women to the point that when it happens to a man, we expect now women to say like, oh, there is an indifference now. Can you do something about it? Personally, I don't engage in such conversations because I'm more likely to get emotional about it because I first encountered gender-based violence when I was 6 years old, and it was terrible. I lost an aunt, a cousin, and the perpetrator committed suicide. So personally, I feel like that is, when people ask me, why are you quiet when a man is being killed? I feel like you're trying to run away from accountability. Yeah, so I really don't engage because it can easily get very emotional for me.
And I did say at the beginning of this, the conversation today is very emotive. Naisula, you wanted to tell us something on the conversation that is turning on social media, turning into a gender war, then, you know, changing the direction from what it is.
Yes. Is this on? Okay, perfect. Yes, so there's a conversation you were having about femicide, the femicide cycle, and I'll connect it to the internet and social media bit in a while. But femicide does not happen in isolation. It doesn't even begin at the GBV stage. It's sustained by everyday behavior, everyday language, everyday attitudes, social structures. So that is what sustains femicide. Those attitudes, that language, the behavior, the social structures that trivialize violence against women by men, right? So even on social media, I've never looked at it as gender wars because I don't think how we have been socialized, there will ever be a day when we are not having quote unquote that war. I just see people who have been socialized very differently, either to value women or devalue women, right? And with regards to, you've talked about the red pill and the manosphere and incel culture, and this is content that is put out online, that it's misogynistic content, right? And usually it's packaged in fitness content, financial advice, relationship advice by men, but if you listen to it keenly, it's very misogynistic. And there's research showing that this is the kind of content that is, the algorithm magically pushes for such kind of content. You will not see feminist, wholesome content being pushed by the algorithm. And so with regards to gender wars, I don't think we will ever get to a point when, but because of how we've been socialized so differently, I don't think we'll ever get to a point where we are agreeing on an individual level. And that is why social structures, political structures, the government, judicial and justice structures have to come in. Because if we are not going to all agree in this room, there has to be a system that stands up for what is right. So yes, that is my opinion. We'll never get to a point where we all agree, right? And if you look at the tech landscape and the people who are behind these tech companies, they're very misogynistic people. And what men don't realize is that misogyny does not also serve you. When men get raped, are you not the first people to shame each other or to shame the victim, right? And it's because of misogyny, you're not ready to take up the work of supporting survivors and victims. You're not ready to take up the work of organizing for yourselves. Organize a march, we will come, right? But don't give us that work. So men have to realize that misogyny does not serve them either at the end of the day. Yes.
Thank you for that. And just highlighted and realized we just have only 2 men in our audience today. So clearly the conversation might be just an echo. But even more so, that is why the conversation of men participating is relevant. And I'm glad on our panel today we have a man. We could call you a man of God. The role of men in this conversation.
I remember earlier on when I was taking my bachelor's degree, and when we were studying the course of gender and theology, my lecturer used to categorically tell me that actually it was a class on feminist theology, and she used to insist that feminists are not necessarily women. It is someone who stands for the right of women and looks for equity in the society.
This is in theology?
Yes, in theology.
Jesus was a feminist.
Yeah. I mean, there are those who interpret it that way. and so that really helped to shape the understanding that being a feminist doesn't necessarily mean that you have to hate men. It's a matter of looking at those who are underprivileged in one way or another because of culture, because of religion and all that, and systemic injustices that have happened for years, and trying to bring them at a level where they can sit at the same table with everyone else in a conversation. And men have a responsibility and a role to play in that kind of conversation. I think what makes many men not think critically about it is because maybe they think of women as at the level of their spouses and fellow women at their age. But when you have daughters and you think about them being mistreated, killed, and going through all the abuses, then that changes your perspective. And it should change your perspective. And it transforms how you look at any other woman out there, thinking that this lady has a father, has a brother, has people who love and care for her, the same way I love and care for mine. Unfortunately, also because of society and societal understanding of who men are, there are many men also going through a lot of violence from other men and even from women. But just the thought of being able to stand up and talk about it is a bigger trauma than even probably what they've gone through. Going into a police station and reporting this has happened to me, I don't even think they would get the courage to do that. Organizing a march, as is being said, you'd show up by yourself as a man if you ever planned something like that. It's much easier for men to come and march for women because they're thinking we are helping the weaker ones. I mean, it's just a perception, and trying to fight for advocate for their rights. But when it happens to a man, the perception is, why did you allow that to happen? It's not that they allowed it to happen. It's violence that occurs to everyone else, and they happen to be victims, and there are many who don't speak about it. There are a number of forums also in the church. I think I went through one of the programs the other day that was encouraging men to be able to speak out about the things that are keeping them in those situations of being oppressed and being hurt. Because it is through those cycles that they will look for somebody else who they perceive to be weaker to vent out on. So if another man is in one way or another abusing one of the men, and you realize that I cannot vent it out on a fellow man because maybe they're stronger than me, who becomes the victim? It's going to be the women. And so if these are not issues that we will be boldly able to come and address them within the men's circle, then I believe it's going to be worsened in one way or another. So as a church, I believe that's a role that we have to play. How do we empower the men to be able to swallow the pride? I don't know how else to put it, and be able to just say, this is what I'm going through, this is what we're going through, and not fear the shame that comes with it. And also change the perception also in social media. I'm there, I'm on X, I see how men talk, and I know for a fact many of the people who talk that way themselves are projecting a fear or a trauma that they have, and they want to victimize the one who has come out. So I think it's just we're a society that pretends. That's what I want to say. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Patricia, you really want to speak on data and technology.
I think I actually wanted to react to the gender one.
Great. Thank you.
Because one of the things we've been doing is, just taking this beyond just the numbers and telling the story. So what I was trying to do was debunk the myth that most of these women are killed by a stranger, someone they met on Tinder, and all those things that usually go around. And so I did a TikTok video explaining that, the data shows over 60% are killed by a husband or a boyfriend. And the comments, the first comment, if you go to that video right now, is Mapangale ni dawa. The other comments are all about, what's the big deal? Why are you making a fuss about this? And you can see clearly what the war is. It's like a man makes such a comment, a woman reacts against it, the man reacts again. There's a clear problem. And when I sat back and I thought about it, I was like, do you remember Onyansha? The guy who killed like 17 women, and he was a psychopath, and he said his target was 100. Why was everybody clearly unanimously against Onyansha and his behavior? Everybody stood up and said Onyansha was wrong here. He killed all these women. When it comes to terrorist attacks, we stand unanimously as Kenyans against terrorist attacks. But when it comes to femicide, that's where we draw the line. There's a problem.
So is it a platform issue, from either TikTok or Twitter? Is it a platform issue? Evelyn, I wanted you to answer that, but because you're here already, please, let's go.
Thank you. My name is Malika Ouma. As she said, that it's like a rebuttal on social media, and sadly enough, I can blame it to the homes in which people are from. And the thing is, you can only hate on something if a level of you has gone through it and never healed from it. So the Onyansha thing is because we can see the victim, the perpetrator. We can see the person who to point at. When it's a terrorist attack, we can see who we're pointing at. But when it comes to something like this, because we don't know who the husband was or the boyfriend was, we're like, oh no, you're going crazy, you deserved it, she probably deserved it. And they always say, she probably deserved it. She did something to deserve a beating. And they try and use a narrative, even on social media, that as Africans, we're supposed to beat our wives. And it's, are we really supposed to be beating our wives? Are we really? And you ask yourself, you who is making that mean comment, who is being so negative about somebody's experience, you don't have a mother, you don't have a sister, you don't have an aunt, you don't have a niece, you don't have any female in your life that, would you want them to go through that? And people don't know how to do that because we've been raised in a way that we're not gonna ask ourselves to be accountable, little things. We're not gonna wanna reflect. And because we don't have that culture, we're gonna keep fighting each other constantly.
Yeah, clearly the platform is pushing a narrative. The gender war that continues in the comments, is it a platform issue? Is it construed in the data or the way technology works?
I think it's a bit of both. because number one, our society has normalized violence, and the platform creates an environment for people to create communities that, you know, perpetuate violence against women and girls. We have seen the Saturday, what are they called? There is a battalion, Masculinity Saturday. That's a whole community that was created on Twitter to ensure that men continue to masculine.
Its aim, apparently, is to teach men how to be more masculine versus feminine.
Yeah. So the platform creates an avenue for that to grow, for that to be nurtured, because it moves from X to TikTok to Instagram and any other social place that you are. So I think it's both. Our society has normalized that, and now we have platforms to, you know, disseminate that violence and our skewed thinking about women.
There's something Naisula mentioned. The act of GBV is like an everyday action. It's in everyday movement. If we are ever at the stage of a matatu to get a matatu, the way I will be handled versus a man are two different things. I am to be guided to the matatu and to be held by two men until I get to my seat. The man is aware of where he's going. I don't. Yet I left my home knowing where I was going. It is an everyday act that we see with the way we're socializing with the other gender every other day that needs to clearly change. And of course, I'm encouraging everyone to speak out on this conversation and encouraging more and more of us to join this conversation. That's why tomorrow's march is very significant, and that's why I want men, women, and children. No, it's okay, children can stay home. Men and women to join it. We need to have that conversation of the gender war. Toby, I feel like you have something to say. If you could kindly stand up and just speak out.
Yeah, according to me, what we are supposed to do is let this conversation go to the smaller spaces, like homes where you are. What do you talk about? And how can you give an environment where everyone can air out their perspective and their opinion? Because according to me, I'm doing so many things in the community, and I'm doing various projects on gender-based violence or on safe public transport. I've been talking with the people of Boda Boda, how things do happen. And in those small conversations that we have been having, first, people talk at a perspective that they do not understand. So you fight. It's a chaos where people share their opinion. But as the conversation continues, you come to understand that this person did not know. When you now start asking, what you're saying, will you be okay if it is your sister? That's now that's where now it starts to pinch. Is it okay if it was your wife? Is it okay if it was your mother? So, change of scenarios, because those people are on social media, they do not know much about gender-based violence. What transition are we in terms of gender-based violence? Because it is the same way like the Gen Z protest, the way it is termed. Our parents used to take things normal. And the same ills are happening, and it is normalized. There are some places where you can be greeted by an abuse or vulgar language, and it's okay, because it is their environment. So taking such conversation to the smaller spaces, it is much okay, because the language also changes. Because here we are talking in a different language. We are using the Englishman language. And when you go to Madare, the language changes. It is now Sheng, another language that they do understand much better. And that's where this conversation can make a greater impact. And also in our small spaces at home, parents do not like talking about this conversation. As a man, go to a man, and you raise your child the way you want him to be, because you never did it. Like, naweza sema, let me put it in Kiswahili. Unataka mtoto wako aishi design yenye wewe hukuweza kuishi. Unaona? Unataka mtoto wako akue engineer because wewe hukufukua engineer. So I fulfill your dreams. So that is the problem. And it takes a lot of conversation and realization of what is taking place. Yeah.
The conversation needs to be had on the ground, and especially in our homes every other day. Yes.
Somebody who is continually harassed on Twitter. What do we even want to say? Okay, now, anytime you post about a woman, actually, when Kipto was killed, you see, I even know his name. When Kipto was killed, he's a 22-year-old young man. When I came on Twitter that day, I was dealing with a case, a very difficult case in Busia. But when I came on Twitter at around midday, I had been called everything but a child of God. I literally thought I had killed that man because of the things I had been called on that day, and how it is my sole responsibility to have reported his death. You see, I'm not online all the time, right? I have work that I need to do offline. And we also do have victims who are men. And we've never told somebody, when you come in as a man, bye, see you. We come, we listen to you, and we actually do the work, right? Even though our core mission is to act against violence against women and girls. Now, this is the thing. This incel culture and red pill and all these things, unfortunately, they don't end on social media. They've gone mainstream to the young boys in school. When you go to a high school that has teenage boys, you hear the things they're regurgitating. It is scary. Right now, these things that are regurgitated, they may not go out the same way, but I'm going to ask women here who use matatus, how safe is it right now to walk on the streets of Nairobi? You are going to be groped, you're going to be touched, and may you raise your voice. Because that is the culture we are fostering. But if you speak about it, it is considered a gender war. It can't be a gender war if one person is the one being consistently attacked because they are defending their right to live, their right to exist, their right to speak against the things that happen to them. And so every time, I refuse to call it a gender war, because me, by there I post and leave. I come back, I find 1,000 comments down my posts, and half of these comments are really brutal, really insulting, really shaming, really they will, as I said, if I was to really read and actualize this into me, I would commit suicide. There are so many bad things that you're called. A man will come and argue and say, look, we have the right to live and blah, 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 blah. And a man will come and say, you deserve to die, you're a slut, you will be shamed, you'll be done all sorts of things, right? Just because you've said a woman was killed. And so I need us to stop calling this a gender war and start reacting to the fact that you can take a position. And men need to take a position. On one hand, we are saying men are unable to come out and report issues of violence against them. Who is the person that attacks the men when they have been violated? Isn't it fellow men? Because as far as I'm concerned, when we have a man victim or survivor, do you know the people with the most sympathy? Women. Oh my God, how could this happen to him? What do you mean his wife left him and left him with a child? Oh, you see so much sympathy, from the women, because they understand what it is to be on that position. So I need men, and good men. There is a saying that says, evil thrives when good men do nothing. And this is why we say all men, because good men are not speaking when these things are happening. They are in a position of neutrality. Me, I don't want, because I don't want to be insulted. Me, I don't want to speak, because if I speak, even me, I'll be shamed. But if we have a battalion of good men that surround you when these things are being spoken. So that because men hear men, men don't hear women, by the way, men listen to other men. So that these men can say, listen, we cannot be doing this, right? We need to take a position, and this is the position as men, authoritatively. I promise you, some of these attacks, they would end. Because it has come from who? Men. Men in positions of society, because men love authority. Men love men with authority. So if it's a man with authority, say for example him, they'll listen. They'll be like, hey, uyu ni pastor. Hey, uyu ni politician. Uyu ni this person. So we need men to come together and actually stand on the authority that they have, that other men regard, because they don't see us, to see them, so that these attacks can cease. It is that simple.
Wow. I was about to ask a closing statement, but I think that's it. The truth is, the conversation between men and men needs to really change so that the conversation of femicide ends, and even undercried. I believe at the core of it, whenever sometimes we say it could be your sister, it could be your... I'm like, no, it's just a human being. At the end of the day, if you don't want it to be done to you, don't do it to another person. I'd like to get any question on the floor today. If you have any question or comment you'd like to give us out, if in the audience, kindly put your hand up, and I will definitely send the mic your way. The march tomorrow is significant for all of us. We have to be there. We're all going to be there. Where are we meeting to begin the march?
Givenchy Gardens, 10. Okay. We march for our lives.
We have someone with opinion on the ground, please.
I have a question. What is the future plan do you have? Because we have been coming here, and at the end of the day, maybe sometimes we don't get the way forward, what you have done. We would like to know, what is the future plan that you have for women after tomorrow? Because maybe the end of the year is ending, and we know there is a lot of things that is going to happen to women, particularly this Christmas season, because people are meeting in church and others are meeting in another places, maybe in nightclubs. And as you know that women, sometimes they are lied, sometimes they're invited in parties without knowing the plans that people are having on them. I would like to know, as Baraza, what are you planning to do with women? Will you have a future conference? Will you have a future seminars? Will you have a future workshop? Will you have a future, maybe bringing people together, the churches, the Muslim, and all the people who are unable to report the gender violence cases? Thank you.
And yes, of course, we are going to be doing that. Of course, as Baraza, Fumbua, and even SemaBOX, we will be participating in the conversation. That's why we have these forums very regularly. We're not going to stop until the conversation is really had, even on the ground, so we're not going to stop. Any other question or comment that you would like to have? Kindly, let's have a mic there, and then anyone else, please put your hand up and we'll send the mic your way.
Hi, my name is Catherine. Mine is more a comment and maybe advisory to society, social media users, and everybody out here. One of the things that we find mostly on social media is that we like looking for excuses for evil. And we have conversations and we'll find somebody asking, what did that person do? Somebody must have triggered this person. I believe that we should just have a simple baseline. No one should be hurting any other person. No one should be killing anyone. We should just go to the basics of humanity. When we have the basics of humanity right, we shall not have any violence or violation to anybody. Thank you.
Just cured world peace. Thank you for that. If we just viewed each other as humans, it would be better. Yes.
Yes, just to make a comment as well. Thank you for the space. Also, I would like to maybe urge all of us in all these spaces on social media, and while we advocate for various issues, think critically. Look at how all our, when it comes to femicide, when it comes to women getting killed, how are these issues tied to other forms of oppression, like how queer people have been getting oppressed all these years. we are not isolated. Look at, for example, how did we end up with all these femicide cases just at the point where our economy wasn't, the country is literally, there were so many things happening, and also how the government was somehow treating its citizens. Young people were getting killed on the streets. So when you study, when you read, when you advocate for an end to femicide, please read and look at how our oppression are tied, and then that will, in a way, help us to stand in solidarity better, because we as women, we need the voices of, even we need to speak for other minority people that are getting oppressed. We need the voices of women, or rather men, with us. And then lastly, I wanted to say that, how on social media, people just speak, and it doesn't, like Jerry said, it doesn't end on social media. It narrows down to, these conversations come down to the ground. How people speak on social media actually reflects, the conversations on the ground. And I would urge us, especially in media spaces, let's see ways we can resource for grassroots organizations like Usikimi to actually get the resources, the money, the capital, or even just, we can maybe volunteer to help with these cases, because not one person can do the work. Not one person can show up with all these survivors. So yes, that's it.
I think she might be among the last. If there's anyone else, please put your hand up, and then we can be able to wrap it up, because our time is running. Yes.
I want to be the devil's advocate to everybody here. I think we all remember some time back when Millie Odhiambo said, good girls don't get the corner office. Good girls don't get the corner office. We can't keep smiling at things when they happen to us. Even on the road, when it's hard, when you're trembling as you're shouting back at this person. We can't keep smiling. We need that ferocity, the ferocity we had for the ending there of the finance bill. We need that ferocity individually. Because when I have the fire, you see I have the fire, you see someone else has the fire, we ignite each other. And clearly it's going to take a whole ignition for people to actually take it serious, because as you said, it's low-key not a gender war. It's a war literally against women. And if we have to take the fire, we will take the fire and dish it back, if that is what it takes. Because clearly, sadly, that is where we are headed. Good girls don't get
the corner office. But good girls make sure they're on the streets tomorrow. We have one, and then we have another.
Yeah, I just want to say we should not keep quiet. Let our voices be heard. Thank you.
I think we have just one more, and then we'll finish with everyone on the floor. Just one more.
Hi, mine was just to echo what you've said lastly. While I do recognize the emotional resonance that you're trying to get by saying this could be your sister, this could be your mother, I personally think that's almost conditional. So I'd like us to push more for according women the respect and dignity that they deserve simply by the virtue of being a human being. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think that's the biggest conversation. Tomorrow we march. Are you joining us? And what is the march? What do we expect from tomorrow as we come to an end?
Personally, I want to say that I from this conversation I have had a deeper understanding that I need to do more than I have been doing.
So you're coming tomorrow?
I may not come tomorrow because of other appointments, not because I don't want to, but because of other appointments of the day.
Tomorrow.
But then I think it's something that I need to now deliberately do more in terms of speaking about it, seminars, conferences, but also in the forum and those who listen to us, what more can we say? Because we deal with these cases every other day, and I just feel that I need to be able to do more, and religious leaders need to be able to do more. We have lawyers in our churches. What are we using them for? We have other people who can really help with these issues. Are we putting them to good use to help heal the members of our churches who are going through the same issues? I know we do a lot of counseling, we do a lot of encouragement and all that, but I believe there's still more that we can do. And I would want to say, personally, I commit to do more. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That is Venerable Brian Othiambo of ACK Kitengela. Whenever you're in Kitengela, please join the Mass and hear the word of God. Tomorrow, we march.
10 a.m. sharp. We will be there. Yeah.
Your closing remarks, please.
Oh, I wasn't ready for a closing remark. I think I just want to reiterate what I said earlier. A national crisis is not solved by acting as individuals with your own individual agendas or your agendas for your organization or whatever it is. It's solved by acting as nationals collectively together. I think if we get back to that, then we'll make impact.
Thank you. Closing remarks as we march tomorrow.
This wars start always against the vulnerable in the community. It starts against, LGBTQ. And then we're like, they are not like us. They deserve it. They don't love like us. Then we go to children. They should be seen and not heard. And so children get violated every time. Last year, 30,000, children were defiled. So now we've moved from children, we've gone to women. I don't know why people think when a continuum of violence will not reach to them. Any violence against any person is violence against all of us. Anytime a woman is killed, anytime somebody is killed or dies because of gender-based violence, anytime somebody is hurt, as a country, we need to reflect. When the Gen Zs were on the street and 62 were killed and 300 are still missing, we haven't stopped to even sit down and think what happened. When she said they have over 100 cases, that they have noted, excluding the 40 women in Quarry and the 90 women, 97 actually. So we're looking at over 300 women. This in 1 year. If it was a pandemic, 300 women. Would we be treating it the way we are treating it, casually, indifferently, without remorse and regard? We would be having daily updates, the ones we used to have during COVID. One person has died for COVID. Why are we not treating it the same? When did human life lose meaning? When did human life lose dignity? When did we stop to mourn? That's all I'm asking. Can we take a step back and just mourn what we have lost? Because along the way, we've lost our humanity. See you tomorrow, 10 a.m., Jivanji Gardens. Thank you.
I can't wait. Thank you so much, Jerry Mugri. Levin.
When I started the conversation, I introduced myself as a feminist journalist. And what I meant by that is that in my practice, I actively, presently, and radically reject neutrality in the face of oppression. And because we implement a media-centric project at Feminists in Kenya, I would like to encourage the media to be intentional about building a media, not building, but to apply a feminist lens in their work, to report stories of violence from a survivor-centered approach. And in my closing, I'd like to refer to the African Feminist Charter, which says that our feminism is not qualified by ifs, buts, and howevers. And tomorrow, I hope that the government, perpetrators, and the Kenyan society understands that the lives of women, that my life as a Kenyan woman, should not be qualified by an if, a but, or a however.
Thank you for that. Evelyn Tener of Feminist Kenya. And of course, Wise Solonka of AJA. Your words and if you're matching with us tomorrow.
Yeah, everyone has shared so powerfully that I'm very charged by everything everyone has shared. But I think my last remarks would be to call out the lie that gender-based violence benefits anyone. It doesn't. It doesn't benefit men, and it for sure does not benefit women. So this lie that I guess men have been fed by culture and society that putting down women for whatever reason brings them up. It's not true. And so because it's not true, the fight is really against whatever lies that have been fed to you. And so it will be just like a call to everyone to think outside of themselves, to not remain selfish. Just because it has not happened to you does not mean you should. That's not like a way for you to care about something. Does not mean that it has happened to you, therefore you care about it. Just to say that if it has affected anyone, then it has affected all of us. So to see it that way, to have a united front, and yeah, tomorrow Jivanji 10 a.m.
I can't believe that this conversation is had to be had at the beginning of the year. I literally was having this conversation at the beginning of the year. And I'm here doing it one more time. It's a sad conversation we need not be having. We need to be having conversations surrounding how do we grow as a people and how do we grow as Africa, because I think that's the biggest narrative we have. There's something she said, and I just remembered. The narrative that Africa has been fed, that women are to be punished, that's not an African narrative, that's a West narrative. In the history of Africa, women have always been equal. One of the oldest mythologies from where I come from, the god was female and male. There was Gikoyo and Mombi. I don't want to get into culture, but just to show that women, from the beginning of time, especially in African mythology, have always been as significant as the males. Because through them life comes out. And we do not want to continue with that conversation, but I want to say that I believe that this is an identity crisis more than anything. The identity of an African was stripped off of them, giving them a color that is not theirs, a name that is not theirs, and a sound that is not theirs. And when you strip them off of it, you strip them off of the people they called human as women to now be seen as less through, sadly, some of the things that we procure in the churches, among many other things. So our issue more than anything is identity. That is why the Red Pill movement will be able to curate a young man to not treat a woman right because of identity crisis. The identity of every African is the issue. So until at home we are preaching the right identity to our children, to our brothers and sisters, we will continue to have different identities of who a human being is. See you tomorrow. Good night. Thank you.